All right, day 2 of populations is on page 338. Predators. Okay, predators. Have you ever seen a bird snatch a worm from the ground or a cat pounce on a mouse? Recall that this interaction is called predation. Predation occurs when one organism, the predator, catches and feeds on another organism, the prey. Predation equals predator catches prey. Predation is an important limiting factor in an ecosystem. Limiting factor. The graph above shows the population of predators, or wolves, that's in red, and their prey, deer, in blue, in an ecosystem in the Midwest. The high points, or spikes, in the graph show when the populations are largest. So there's an example of the wolves. Over here is an example of the deer. The low points, or dips, show when the population are the smallest. Okay, there's one for the wolves and another one over here. Here's one for the deer and another one right there. Notice that the spikes and dips of both populations follow a similar cycle. See how they're both kind of rising a little bit at the same time and then falling a little bit at the same time and rising again? This cycle occurs in many predator-prey relationships and in a variety of ecosystems. So, prey equals food, cycle. When any prey population grows, predators have plenty to eat. As a result, the predator population grows. Okay, so there's plenty of deer, so the wolf population grows because there's plenty to eat. With more wolves, many more deer are killed than are born, so the deer population drops. Okay, once you get up to a certain point, there are so many wolves that they start eating up all the deer before they can repopulate, so they start falling. Okay, with its food supply reduced, the wolf population drops as well. Okay, they get up to this point, there aren't enough deer to sustain all those wolves, so their population starts dropping also. With fewer wolves hunting them, the surviving deer enjoy a period of reduced predation. The deer population rises again. Okay, so the wolf population got low enough that now the blue deer population starts to go back up again. The predator-prey cycle repeats itself. Okay, so cycle, population control. Predator and prey species can live together in this way for a long time. Their numbers cycle from high to low and back again in a natural process of population control. Population control. Okay, diseases. Diseases. In 1347, a trading ship from China sailed into an Italian port. It carried not only goods, but a deadly disease called bubonic plague. Rats infested with fleas that carried the disease left the ship. So, 1347, rats with fleas, bubonic plague. The disease eventually spread throughout Europe. Within 5 years, the Black Death, as it was known, killed 25 million people, a third of the European population. Black Death. A disease is a condition that prevents an organism from functioning properly. It is an important limiting factor because it can stop population growth. Stops population growth. Diseases often appear in animal populations, weakened by overcrowding or lack of food and water. Overcrowding, lack of food and water. Disease can also affect plant populations. Can be plants too. Dutch elm disease, for example, arrived in the United States with a shipment of logs around 1930. Bark beetles spread the disease. By 1970, it had killed 77 million American elms. So this little beetle came all the way from Holland, all the way to the United States back in 1930. 40 years later, it had killed 77 million trees. 50 years ago, many city streets were lined with elm trees. Bark beetles spread Dutch elm disease, which killed most of the elms. Okay, invasive species. Invasive species. The natural balance of ecosystems can be destroyed when an organism arrives from elsewhere. Invasive species are plants or animals that are not native to an ecosystem. Not native. Where was it? I didn't see the words yet, so I'll wait. One such invader is a fish called the Chinese snakehead. There it is. It was imported from Asia for aquariums and for food, but some of the snakeheads escaped. Now they have entered freshwater bodies from Florida to Maryland. Snakehead populations have exploded as they eat native fish and other animals in lakes and streams. Invasive species harm ecosystems because they often have no natural predators. Harm ecosystems, often no natural predator. In such cases, their populations can increase quickly. They crowd out native species and consume resources. They can also destroy habitats and disrupt food chains. Okay, the Chinese snakehead is infesting lakes and streams in North America. It competes with native species. What happens to prey populations when predator populations rise? Okay, well, like we learned over here, when predator populations rise, prey populations tend to go down. So when the predator wolf population rises, eventually the prey deer population falls. There are so many predators attacking and eating the prey that they have a hard time reproducing. But they get to a certain point where the predators can't survive either, and their populations start to decrease. Eventually there will be so few wolves that the deer population can recover. Remember, they were talking about that cycle of population control. The cycle of population control up here in predators. Okay, extinction. Most of the species that ever lived on Earth are now extinct. Let's think about that. Most species that ever lived on Earth are now extinct. Most species that ever lived now extinct. Extinction. So dinosaurs, all extinct. Creatures that lived before the dinosaurs, all extinct. Ancient trees, plants, all extinct. So much stuff used to live so long ago, and the Earth is so old, that most of the species that have ever existed are already extinct. Extinction is the complete disappearance of a species. Extinction can occur when the conditions in an ecosystem change in a way that makes the species unable to survive. Conditions change. Many species become extinct naturally. However, the actions of humans have greatly increased the rate of extinction. Humans increased rate. In the late 1500s, for example, several European ships visited the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. The ships brought pigs, rats, and cats. They killed many native species, including a large flightless bird called the dodo. So, example given, dodo bird. By the late 1600s, a combination of invasive species and other factors drove the dodo to extinction. Perhaps the most significant way humans increase the rate of extinction is through habitat destruction. Habitat destruction. As people build homes, roads, and shopping centers, they destroy natural ecosystems. When habitats are destroyed, organisms lose the resources they need. Okay, let's take a look up here. Millions of passenger pigeons once lived in eastern North America. In the 1800s, they were hunted for their meat, feathers, and fat. They became extinct in 1914. That's all the way back in World War I. That's 100 years ago. That's more than 100 years ago. Passenger pigeon. Rescuing species. Rescuing species. When a species is close to becoming extinct, it is called an endangered species. When a species is close to becoming endangered, it is called a threatened species. So the order they go in is threatened, then endangered, and then extinct. In the United States, the Endangered Species Act was passed in 1973. It protects plants and animals that are in danger of extinction. Other laws protect their habitats. So laws help protect. In some cases, captive breeding programs help rescue endangered species. Captive breeding. Look at that word, captive, as in capture, breeding. The California condor. Hey, we know all about that here in the Central Valley. Once ranged across North America. By 1967, only 50 to 60 individuals remained in the wild. Many had been shot or collided with power lines. When the wild population dropped to 9 birds, wildlife experts captured them and began breeding condors in captivity. By 1992, the population had grown large enough to start releasing condors back into the wild. A captive breeding program is helping to save the California condor from extinction. Okay, what are 2 factors that lead to extinction of a species? 2 factors that lead to extinction of a species include changing conditions and human activity. So, for example, humans destroying habitats could affect extinction and increase the rate of extinction, or conditions changing such as an invasive species showing up, a new disease, or maybe even a new predator that was an invasive species, which leads to more competition. All right, let's do the visual summary. Populations grow until they reach the limits of the ecosystem's resources. Okay, so listen for those keywords: populations, limits, resources. Populations, resources, we're highlighting now. Limiting factor restricts growth of population. Limited resources, population can exceed resources available. That makes it a limiting factor. Let's see, competition using same resources. Ecosystem balance, carrying capacity. Every ecosystem can support a limited number of organisms, a number called the carrying capacity. So, limited number, carrying capacity. We already did carrying capacity. We did same resources. We did limited resources. Okay, the relationship between predators and prey is one of the many factors that help limit population growth in an ecosystem. Predator-prey relationship. That's predation. Predators. Predation is when predator catches prey. There's a cycle that helps with population control. Let's see, anything else there? No? Okay. Extinction occurs when a species completely disappears. Human actions have caused the extinction of many species, including the passenger pigeon. So extinction, humans causing it. Let's see, extinction is not in the main idea. Interesting. Extinction, oops, I didn't highlight that. Okay, so let's highlight extinction, complete disappearance. What else? Extinction, conditions change, humans increased rate, passenger pigeon. Okay, let's double check what we have highlighted. Populations, resources, predator-prey relationships, extinction, complete disappearance, limiting factor restricts growth of population, predation, limited resources, population can exceed resources available, limiting factor, competition, using same resources, ecosystem balance, carrying capacity, predators, predation, predator catches prey, cycle, population control, extinction, conditions change, humans increased rate, passenger pigeon. Okay, now let's use the main idea to annotate with the red pen. Populations is an important term, resources, predator-prey relationships, diseases, competition. Competition, disease, limiting factor, because that's talking about the populations depending on those resources, predation, predator-prey relationship, limited resources again, limiting factor, population can exceed the resources available. Let's see, ooh, there's competition. Remember where it said competition, right over here, competition. Competition, what does it mean? Using the same resources. Carrying capacity, that's the same as populations depending on resources. Predator-prey relationship, predation, diseases. Okay, remember there's diseases. I didn't hear anything about invasive species, but invasive species change competition, right? They are a condition change. When a new species comes in, and there's no other natural predators, that invasive species is going to do very well. It's going to create a whole new set of competition. Okay, and then conditions changing. Let's see, conditions changing. Yep, competition is when conditions change, like the introduction of an invasive species. Okay, phase 3, something you know from your brain that connects with all of this stuff. Don't write what's on the paper, write what's in your brain. It's not on this paper, it's in your brain. Make a prediction and give a reason why. I predict something because ... And then let's do a little practice phase 4 summary paragraph. Let's see what we have. Populations depend on resources, predator-prey relationships, diseases, and competition. Let's see. A population can exceed the resources available, making it a limiting factor. Resources can limit how many animals or how many organisms exist in an ecosystem. Okay. Competition is when organisms use the same resources, and that's also a powerful limiting factor. The number of organisms that can exist is called the carrying capacity. The predator-prey relationship is important. Predation is when predators catch prey, and that usually results in a cycle of population control, similar to the wolves and deer example in the book. Invasive species introduce new competition. They're an example of conditions changing. When conditions change or humans do the wrong thing, animals often end up extinct. There you go. There's a good paragraph, something like that. All right. Good job persevering with the growth mindset, and roar, Wildcats.